This is a somewhat important review, as my very first post on ML Miller Frights was about the news of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. Well, the wait has been long, and the reports have been shaky, with news of the original directors being fired from the project after the first week of filming, the filming location set in Bulgaria, and the news that Leatherface was to be aged in real time since Tobe Hooper's original Massacre in 1974. Fans, myself included, were frightened that we were going to get another disastrous TCM sequel. Sure, it's groovy that Evil Dead's Fede Alvarez is producing, but producing often means very little more than managing talent and money. So I stayed up late, watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 as soon as it appeared on Netflix, and put together this here review to come full circle and let you know my thoughts, my theories, and whether or not you should waste your time with it. Let's get her done. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 is brand spanking new, streaming on Netflix. It's directed by David Blue Garcia and written by Chris Thomas Devlin, Fede Alvarez, and Rodo Sayagues, and based on characters created by Tobe Hooper and Kim Henkel. A group of San Francisco influencers spearheaded by Melody, played by Sarah Yarkin, Dante, played by Jacob Lattimore, and Melody's sister Lila, played by Elsie Fisher, purchased real estate in Harlow, Texas, in hopes to renovate the area and make it a safe space for them to build businesses and reignite the once thriving community. They are met with opposition from the sheriff, played by Alien's William Hope, a local maintenance man, Richter, played by Mo Dunford, and most importantly, Mrs. Mick, played by Silent Hill's Alice Creech, an alien caretaker at a local orphanage. The orphanage has one sole occupant other than Mrs. Mick, our main man Leatherface, Lowlife's Mark Burnham, who is now in his 70s. When Mrs. Mick is confronted by the newcomers, she gets overexcited, passes out, and eventually passes away. This ignites a spark of revenge in Leatherface, who has been dormant and quiet since the 70s, causing the madman to fire up the chainsaw again and go on a rampage. Meanwhile, Sally Hardesty, played by Mandy's Olwen Fiore, gets wind of Leatherface's return, packs up her shotgun, and heads to Harlow to battle the man who murdered her friends and family all those years ago. If you're looking for issues to have with this film, it's not hard to find them. Characters make extremely dumb and nonsensical decisions. There's no reason for one character to go with the sheriff to transport Leatherface and his caretaker to the hospital. One character has lived 2 doors down from Leatherface and never suspected anything sideways going on. Instead of the brutality and mind-shredding terror crippling the minds of the final girl, they come out meaner and tougher, more empowered, as that is the flavor of the day when it comes to horror films and the climate of Hollywood's message in general these days. There's a theme about overcoming scars of the past and evolving into something more proactive that runs throughout this entire film, as one of the characters is a survivor of a school shooting and survived while all her classmates died. If you're looking for a film that evokes the kind of absolute horror of the original, you're not going to find it here. But remakes, reboots, sequels, continuations are inevitable, and all we can do, as fans of the original, is hope that they make a film worth watching. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 has some really good-looking scenery. Though the film was made in Bulgaria, the way the landscape looks, it could pass for Texas. A nice callback to the original was made, as there are fields of rotting sunflowers that offer up a mood of faded beauty and antiquity. There's a specific kill involving a spring-loaded door that is nicely realized. Sure, the town looks like it was made on a Hollywood backlot with a simple block of storefronts, but the way things are filmed feel legit. There's some talent behind this camera. There aren't the morbid details of the Sawyer house from the original with skeleton sculptures or a room full of caged chickens and chicken feathers, but there's a look of wear and tear to the scenery that makes everything feel lived in, old, and scary. A lot of people have had issues with the fact that this film is supposed to center on a 70-year-old Leatherface. In the world of the film, apparently, Leatherface was a teenager in the first movie. He certainly acted like a man-child, but I never saw him as that way age-wise. Still, the fact that Leatherface is old never really factors into the story itself, and honestly, I don't think it should. Anyone who has seen the original and a few of the sequels would know that Grandpa is old as dirt. He's 124 years old, to be exact, according to the cook, and the cannibalism seems to have been a thing in the Sawyer family for generations. If eating humans makes Grandpa stay spry enough to whack a hammer on a screaming damsel, I think Leatherface could still be quite spry and deadly in his 70s, eating the same kind of meat. Who knows what kind of effects a diet of human flesh does to the physiology of people. There are also a lot of people pissed about the Gen Zers, or influencers, or whatever generation this new group of proactive, socially conscious youngsters are calling themselves these days as the protagonists of this film. Again, I think people annoyed by this and mislabeling this as a woke film are completely off base. Look at the original. Look at Friday the 13th. Look at any of the slashers in the 80s, and they targeted the young. Like it or not, the young are almost surgically connected to their phones, are very comfortable calling out people for behavior they disagree with, and rush to judge without giving much of a thought of others' perspectives. Those are the kids who show up in Harlow. Yes, the line from the trailer about canceling Leatherface is cringy, but these are the ones Leatherface fucking massacres with his chainsaw. Just as he did with the hippies when this was made in the 70s. Just as Michael killed suburban brats and Jason killed yuppies in the 80s. Criticizing this film because it features an accurate depiction of today's youth and then utterly annihilates them with a chainsaw is pretty ridiculous if you ask me, especially if you are annoyed by that generation. You should be lauding them because they get their asses handed to them here. One of the things that I feel almost every recent Texas Chainsaw Massacre gets wrong is what makes Leatherface different than most of the iconic slashers of his age.
I don't have friends. I got family.
Yeah, that's right, Vin. Family. Unlike Jason or Freddy or Michael, Leatherface never acted alone. The entire original film climaxed with a family dinner, a chance to gather around the table and celebrate the passing of another day with those you love. While highly dysfunctional, be they the Sawyers or the Hewitts or the Howletts or the Slaughters, Leatherface is strengthened and supported by his eccentric family, and they never missed coming together for a family meal. For some reason, though, Texas Chainsaw 3D, Leatherface, and now this reboot all but forget this concept, and instead focuses on a solo man with a chainsaw as the threat. Now, like many of you, I'm sick of seeing these films come together with a dinner scene, but that doesn't mean I don't want to see aspects of family celebrated in these films. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 really doesn't highlight the motivation of Leatherface being his family. Leatherface is motivated by revenge. Sally Hardesty's motivation is the same. And while I get why this one chooses to center on both's desire for revenge for the destruction of their families, I hope future films will remember that family is what makes TCM movies distinct from the rest. The bumper at the end suggests just that very theme, thankfully. There's quite a lot of gnarly gore. While most of the original was bloodless, I don't mind a story about a cannibal killer with a chainsaw getting goppy. TCM 22 ends with some really gruesome kills, and they occur early on and throughout. Leatherface kicks ass with or without his hardware. Sure, the mask looks a bit droopy, kind of like if you left your Leatherface too close to a candle all night. But this film delivers some heinous mallet and cleaver carnage, and lets you know why the word chainsaw is in the title in an extended gore sequence that you really haven't ever seen before in this series. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, even though it fails to pronounce it as chainsaw as it did in the original, delivers some solid scares. Leatherface, though old, is probably the most brutal and active as we've seen him in ages. I think Burnham does a fantastic job of conveying the ominous physicality of Leatherface. I hope he returns if this is given a sequel. There's never a dull moment. Leatherface is introduced early on, and the saw gets fired up often. Smart use was made with utilizing the sound of the revving chainsaw and the starting and stopping of it. While the lack of budget shows up in terms of setting the film in basically a single block, the money is piped into the effects, and they pay off. The use of Sally Hardesty is going to piss off a lot of people, but it also sort of acts as a lesson to filling your life with nothing but rage and revenge. Still, her part really doesn't honor the amazing work of Marilyn Burns very well, and that's going to sting some folks in the wrong places. Yes, it is very reminiscent of Halloween, but it fails to honor the original Final Girl as that series did. The film ends with some balls, though, and it manages to pay homage to the original in a pretty unique way. I have to say, I'll most definitely be watching this one again. I couldn't say that for the last two entries. This one is much better than those stinkers. Faulted as it is, I found Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 to be a decent, worthwhile watch. There's no way this will please those only committed to the original, but I was glad seeing Leatherface back in action and would love to see more massacring with chainsaws in Texas from Alvarez's team.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're